Sounds good. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today at Tourism's Town Hall. My name is Donnelly DeMarc. I'm the CEO for Northwest Territories Tourism, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. TIAC's Tourism Town Hall Series is an event partnership between the Tourism Industry Association of Canada, Destination Canada, and the Northwest Territories Tourism. We would like to thank Air Canada as the sponsor for the series. This Tourism Town Hall will provide the opportunity to hear from TIAC and Destination Canada to better understand efforts being made nationally on behalf of our industry. More importantly, this session will provide an opportunity to engage on issues affecting your business and the tourism industry in the NWT during this time of COVID. It will also give you a chance to provide feedback on government policy for the recovery and rebuilding of our sector. Before we start, just a reminder that we will have time at the end of the session for some questions and answers. If you have any questions that you have not already sent to us in advance, please submit them through the Q&A interface, which you can access at the bottom of your screen. We will pick them up during the course of the presentations. Also, please note that today's session will be recorded and made available on the TIAC website. So if you'd like to go and take a look at it after or share it, you can do that from their website. Lastly, for those that may be more fluent in French, we have sent the French presentations by email for you to easily follow along, and they will also be available on the TIAC website. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land which we each of us call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relations between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. Today, I'm joining you from Yellowknife, and I wish to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory and home for many Indigenous peoples, including the Yellowknife-Dene First Nation, the Talicho First Nation, and homeland to the North Slave Métis Alliance. Our panelists for today are Beth Potter, President and CEO of the Tourism Industry Association of Canada, and Marsha Walden, President and CEO of Destination Canada, and myself. NWT Tourism is the industry association for the NWT as well as the Destination Marketing Organization, and we have just shy of 200 members. Our partners and main funders are the GNWT, Government of the Northwest Territories, Industry, Tourism and Investment, and CanNor. I would like to say thank you very much to the people that we get to work with at both of these organizations. I'd like to take a minute to highlight the supports that were recently announced from the GNWT, the much needed STAR and PREP funding relief programs for our tourism operators and hotel industry. We are anxiously awaiting to know what the supports for our industry will be from the federal government. We are hoping they will be similar to last year's grants programs and will not be loans. For myself, being new to tourism, I've had a lot to learn and get up to speed quickly. I'm very thankful to have such great partners at the government and at TIAC and Destination Canada. I would like to thank each organization for being such great supporters of NWT tourism and for being a huge resource as we help navigate with our members through this pandemic. During my 5 months with NWT Tourism, while the staff have been working hard to keep us top of mind as a destination to visit when the time is right, most of my time has been spent advocating for our members that have been impacted hugely by the COVID-19 virus. It has been devastating to our industry, of course, economically, but it has also deeply touched the spirit of our people involved in tourism. We have had some small successes along the way. Our government worked hard with us to allow our remote operators to receive visitors from within Canada, but outside the NWT this summer. And as mentioned earlier, the NWT government stepped up to the table in a huge way with the STAR and PREP funding relief programs. We still have a long way to go, unfortunately. We need to get our NWT border open to leisure travel. We need to get the Canada-US border open to leisure travel. We need to make sure that there are funding relief grants in place until the industry can fully rebound. And I'm very grateful to have the partnerships in place that we have to help navigate us through what is hopefully to be the light at the end of a very long tunnel. I'm also grateful to all of our tourism industry members who have been great at contacting me directly and sharing their concerns and frustrations. Our tourism industry is very fortunate. We're very full of dedicated people. It's now my pleasure to welcome Beth Potter, President and CEO of the Tourism Industry Association of Canada. Off to you, Beth.
Thank you, Donna-Lee. And hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you today, virtually in the Northwest Territories. Bonjour tout le monde et merci de vous joindre à nous aujourd'hui. As many of you know, I joined TIAC as President and CEO just a few short months ago, but I am no stranger to the industry and have been actively involved for more than 30 years. I want to thank you for participating in today's Tourism Town Hall and for allowing me to share an update on the work that TIAC has been doing on your behalf. I understand how hard these past 15 months have been on you and how concerned you are about the future. But before I start, I would like to first take a moment to acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home from coast to coast to coast. We extend our respect to them for their valuable past and present contributions to this land. I would also like to pause and share our sympathy and support following the tragic and horrific discovery of the mass grave of Indigenous children. As the President and CEO of TIAC, I offer our commitment to change. The Inuit, Métis, and First Nation peoples are the foundation of our country. We need to honor them, their traditions, and their beliefs as we remember the children, as we work to be more inclusive, as we go forward. TIAC is committing to learn more from our Indigenous cousins and will work to include Indigenous traditions and teachings in our work. I'm sure many of you are asking, how are we going to get through this and what is TIAC doing to help? And that's why I'm here to give you an update on our current activities, initiatives, and our plans to lead Canada's tourism economy through to recovery. TIAC is the national voice for the tourism industry. We take action on behalf of you, Canadian tourism businesses, advocating, promoting, and supporting policies, programs, and activities that will benefit the sector's growth and development. While our office is based in Ottawa, we work closely with our provincial and territorial counterparts, including Northwest Territories Tourism. Donna-Lee and her team keep us up to date of what is happening here so we can address the full range of issues facing this industry. In a nutshell, we exist to give you a voice at the federal level so you can keep focused on running your business. We are here to fight for you, which is exactly what we've been doing, fighting for your survival through this pandemic. It is our privilege and responsibility to represent the suite of sectors that make up Canada's visitor economy. The past year has looked a little different in terms of our national advocacy efforts. For the past 15 months, we've been focused on securing support for you through this pandemic, ensuring our industry can survive and successfully recover post-COVID-19. We have been elevating the issues impacting our industry and meeting with federal officials, including MPs and senators, to share stories of industry challenges and needs. We've been pushing the sector-specific support and relief programs, and we've met with over 100 individual MPs in the few months since I joined. From the very beginning of this pandemic, our message to government has been clear. The tourism industry is a vital economic generator and an employer of millions. Canada cannot afford to lose its tourism sector. Tourism was the first hit, the hardest hit, and will be the last to recover, and this industry needs continued support. After the budget announcement in April, we began facilitating conversations with government to understand the rollout of the proposed programs. We are focused on providing input and feedback, ensuring that the needs of the tourism industry are met through these plans. The budget includes a $1 billion package for tourism support over 3 years. This includes funding through the regional development agencies, in your case, CanNor, for festivals and events, and towards a tourism relief fund to support investments by local tourism businesses in adapting to public health measures to help with recovery. And it also included funding for Destination Canada to ensure Canadian destinations are top of mind for Canadians in the beginning and to entice the return of the high-value international travelers, ensuring that we remain a player on the global level. There are numerous other items in the budget that impact our sector. However, our main priority is to ensure that you understand when and if the tourism supports become available and how to access them. We will actively be sending out updates and information to industry as we have been doing. Watch for our COVID updates every Wednesday. As we learn more through our discussions with government, we will work with Northwest Tourism to ensure you have this information as quickly as possible. And while we share this information with you, I do have a favor to ask of you, to please continue sharing with us. It is crucial that we hear from you on issues you are facing, particularly pertaining to federal support programs, so that we can work to address them. When we meet with federal officials, we tell your story of losing staff, losing revenue, and worrying about how you will continue to operate. We highlight what your losses and struggles mean to the community and country in economic impact and the unique needs of the industry. Advocating on behalf of our members, employees, and businesses is our priority, but we are also looking ahead and are committed to champion the recovery of the industry. Earlier this month, we launched a campaign calling on the federal government to reopen the Canada-US border. The campaign focuses on getting Canadian decision makers to acknowledge the urgent need and to commit to a date to open the border before another summer tourism season is lost. We've garnered over 300 distinct media mentions across Canada and the US. And if you'll indulge me, I'd like to play a short video for you.
Well, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and President Joe Biden have not yet scheduled to meet on the sidelines of the G7 summit. There was an expectation they would to discuss the U.S.-Canada border, which has been closed for non-essential travel for 15 months.
So prior to the pandemic, the industry was a $105 billion a year industry. We employ close to 2 million people. Our industry is less than half that now. It has been devastated. We don't want to lose a second summer, so we need to get the borders open so that we can get visitation coming back across the border and revitalizing Canadian communities from coast to coast to coast.
We've been working behind the scenes with government officials for the past 15 months, and now we're seeing the recent scientific reports and the expert panel report as evidence that now is the time to be transparent with a phased reopening approach.
We're asking the federal government, at the time that they're considering stopping the wage subsidy and the rent subsidy for these businesses, that at the same time we need to give them a clue, a better understanding of when that border will open.
That element of business travel is so vital and is at the heart of why we're so passionate about getting the U.S. border open. That is our biggest market, and that is our only path to recovery.
Businesses are wanting to be able to plan for the summer, and so we're asking government to work collaboratively at all levels and give industry a date to work towards. The industry is ready to welcome international travelers back, so that's what we're waiting for. As we all know, other countries have started welcoming travelers and Canada has fallen behind. We must prepare to open the border safely and in turn restart our visitor economy. Without question, now is the time for the federal government to put in place an evidence-based plan to reopen the border and restart travel. Canadian tourism operators and businesses need to have the ability to plan. We need time to market, to rebook, to rehire and retrain. And we will be ready to welcome visitors, but we require some time to plan. We'd like to ask you to join us in putting your support behind ours and send a letter to your member of parliament or your member of legislative assembly by visiting tourismcounts.ca. Our efforts on proof of vaccination are to lead the conversation on ensuring a national approach. We need one seamless system across Canada as opposed to differing regional approaches. This would only create confusion to both domestic and international travelers. TIAC believes that Canadians deserve a single national policy to travel that clarifies the country's position on vaccine certification, our international border, unvaccinated minors, partially vaccinated Canadians, and other critical details that require national leadership. We also know that not everyone will get vaccinated, and that is why it is crucially important that we plan for testing and processes for those that are traveling without a vaccine. It is our firm belief that travel cannot be limited to only those who have been vaccinated. TIAC is also looking to lead the way in changing the current narrative on behalf of the sector. We need public confidence to understand that when restrictions are lifted, our businesses are prepared to offer experiences following all the necessary health and hygiene protocols. And while we've been facilitating conversations with the Canadian and US governments, we are also at the global table through the World Travel and Tourism Council to ensure Canada is part of the seamless traveler experience for people that are moving around the world as we recover from the pandemic. Though domestic travel will be a critical first step in recovery, we need to ensure Canada keeps its competitive global position as a tourism destination. Now, at the end of May, we had our tourism week, and I want to thank all of you who supported and engaged with us during that week. It was a fantastic rally by the industry. This year, we called on Canadians to take the 2021 Tourism Pledge, and that is when restrictions are lifted to travel in Canada first. We continue to ask Canadians to take this pledge. Before I close, I would like to personally thank our members for supporting our advocacy efforts and encourage you all to get engaged and support the organizations at the local, provincial, and national levels who are working on your behalf. Thank you once again for joining our town hall today, and I look forward to addressing your questions in a few minutes. Back to you, Donnelly.
Thank you, Beth. Merci. It is now my pleasure to welcome Marsha Weldon, President and CEO of Destination Canada. Over to you, Marsha.
Well, hello, everyone. Bonjour à tous. Thank you, Donnelly. And thank you for joining us today and for your interest in our work. It's really great to be speaking with our partners in Northwest Territories, even if it's only virtually this time. And I look forward to meeting many of you in person in the future. Je suis très heureuse d'être ici aujourd'hui. Je vais donner cette présentation en anglais, mais nous avons fourni le document en français aux gens intéressés. I'd first like to acknowledge that I am joining you this afternoon from Vancouver, the traditional home of the Coast Salish peoples, the Musqueam, the Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. And we honor these lands and, more importantly, the people that lived on them from time immemorial. I also want to acknowledge that on behalf of all of us at Destination Canada, I want to express the intense sorrow and horror we feel as our discoveries of unmarked graves are revealed at former residential schools. We know this is not only about past history, that these tragedies exist in the lived experience of many Indigenous people today. And we're committed as an organization to taking meaningful steps in growing our Indigenous partnerships and deepening our knowledge as we work together to support reconciliation in our country. For you, those of you who may not know much about Destination Canada, we are a federal crown corporation, and it's our mandate to try to help sustain a vibrant and profitable Canadian tourism industry. As you can imagine, the past year has not been easy in that regard. And we do this through our marketing work around the world, a very robust research capability, providing business intelligence for government decision-making, as well as industry insight. Through destination development work, to enhance the product and the experiences and infrastructure that support tourism in our country, and through partnerships that we make here in Canada and across the world. As you can appreciate, much of our industry strength is found in the relationships that all of us have as partners, whether it's down the road from us or across the country and across the industry. And so it is with us at Destination Canada. We've had a working relationship for many years with TIAC and Northwest Territories Tourism to bolster our industry's overall prospects as a nation in a super competitive global sector. and even more competitive now than it was even in 2019, I would argue. Before moving on, though, I just want to acknowledge how terribly difficult we know this past year has been for tourism and hospitality operators. And I think this slide pretty much says it all. And many of you will be living this right now and hoping for brighter days ahead. And even for those left standing, we know that recovery will be a long and challenging path for many of our operators. So today I'm going to touch on our work really in 3 phases across 3 time horizons. First of all, you know, the job 1 was surviving the pandemic, and we're not through it yet, obviously, and we continue to face restrictions in different parts of the country, but there is light at the end of this long, dark tunnel, as Donna Lee referenced. And so I think in the short term, there's some reason for optimism. The second part, of course, and this is where we're at now, I would argue, is really reviving market revenue. Relief has been tremendously helpful, government relief programs, but really for long-term health, we have to get the revenue engine back operating again and to secure the promise of growth and opportunity that still exists for the future of tourism. And finally, as an industry, as an organization, we spend time thinking about not just the present day, but what is it going to take to really thrive in the long term, to increase the overall vitality of our industry and make sure that we continue to deliver net benefits to communities, but also more secure, longer term resilience for the businesses in our sector. So I'd like to start with just a very brief look backward at the initial response that Destination Canada had to help our tourism industry survive the initial impacts of the pandemic. I think we all knew that travel was going to restart first at a very hyper-local level. Typically, our work is overseas and in international markets like the US, and we have not had a large domestic role. That being supported mostly by city DMOs and provincial and territorial destination marketing organizations. But as we entered the summer of 2020, there was a ray of hope that we would have some opportunity to drive revenue, at least domestically. And so we quickly concocted a co-op marketing approach that was able to respond to the very different realities that every province and territory was facing with the pandemic. And hence we partnered with our provincial and territorial DMO partners to bring funds down through the system and help support on the ground communities and cities that could better talk about local experiences for local travel. And that's really where the best opportunity was last year. And we did our very best to try to support that using the parts of our ecosystem that were more connected to do so. We also invested more than $18 million in other initiatives and partnerships that helped us bring together very significant players, both from a financial perspective, from a media reach perspective, and from a sales channel perspective to help extend the buying power of our partners in Canada in various ways. And it goes without saying, I hope, that you know, we do acknowledge that the speed and scale of government response at every level of government, municipal, Indigenous, provincial, territorial, federal, the level of response that we've seen from governments writ large has never before been seen in times of peace to a kind of crisis like this. And just the federal government alone has invested over $15 billion through various programs to support tourism in the past year. And looking ahead, we are seeing lots of strong signals of future demand, and we only need to look south of the border to see what consumer behavior can look like in our future. Certainly the Americans are out ahead of us in terms of opening up their travel restrictions. And we can see that consumer sentiment, even in Canada, correlates extremely closely with real-time conditions. So as we see the current rollout of vaccines strengthening and quickening, we're seeing the same pattern in consumer sentiment around travel, not just about being a traveler oneself, but about hosting visitors in one's community. So the confidence is growing, and that's a very important signal from our domestic marketplace and indeed from international marketplaces as we look forward. We see these trends sustaining themselves over summer. We'll have a chance later, I'm sure, to talk a bit about when we see things opening up. And we do need, as an industry, to continue championing the widespread adoption of vaccines. That, for us as an industry, is the light at the pandemic. And so continuing to encourage Canadians to get their shots will get us all on the road to recovery much faster. So I know many of you have wide followings, and let's use those followings collectively to help our health officials and make sure that Canadians are ready to travel and to come and visit us this summer. So 80% of Canadians say they do plan to travel once restrictions are lifted. And while that's super optimistic, there is a bit of a cautionary tale here. And that is that Canada typically has a large travel deficit. And what that means is that Canadians spend almost double on outbound travel, leaving our country, going to other places in the world, compared to what foreign travelers spend coming here on inbound travel to Canada. We're among the most widely traveled populations on the planet. And so our cautionary tale is really about, if borders do open, will Canadians choose to travel in Canada, or will they choose to immediately spend their money elsewhere? And so that is a very big risk for us as an industry. We need Canadians to keep their holiday dollars in Canada this year to speed up our sector's recovery, and especially in the event that our borders do not open to others. We can't have Canadians sitting on their wallets this summer, waiting for international borders to open up. So the work the pledge to travel in Canada, that work with AITC and our own marketing work is critically important to making the case for Canadians to see and do marvelous things in our own country. So a key part of our plan to revive revenue is this multi-phased approach that aligns our messaging with the evolution of health restrictions. And of course, we have 13 provinces and territories to keep an eye on and to try to find the common ground that will allow us to promote travel in Canada. We do have an agreement of roles and responsibilities with our partners across the country. We know most provinces and territories will be very focused on getting their own populations to travel within their own province, and so their investments are going there. Whereas our partners have asked Destination Canada to promote inter-provincial travel, getting people to move across and around the country to visit urban centers that are just having such a tough time of it, and to make sure that we're reigniting the health of our airlines, so that all of us in the long term will benefit both from domestic and international travel. So during these stages, we have a couple of key goals. First of all, helping Canadians understand the importance of our industry and making sure that they are willing to support it coming back into their communities. We need to inspire confidence in travel and the desire to travel domestically. And we need to reignite that welcoming spirit that Canadian communities have always had, to whether they're welcoming visitors from down the highway or from over the ocean. So we're very quickly moving into phase 3, where our calls to action have become more and more aggressive in the last couple of weeks, which we're very happy to be able to do. And this is really now encouraging Canadians to book their travel now. And indeed, we know that many Canadians are well ahead of that and making sure that they have the opportunity to travel this summer. So in the coming months, I would say that all of us have an important role to play in re-inspiring that confidence. So if you as operators are amplifying the social sharing of your guests, do so even more meticulously now, because it's that peer-to-peer social sharing of early travel adopters that will really inspire the confidence of all those people that come after them. You know, seeing your friends and family and colleagues traveling gives you a sense of confidence and will get people back out on airplanes, in airports, in cars to visit other parts of Canada. So just a few examples of our work here coming up on the screen that are specific to Northwest Territories. In the middle of your screen, you may recognize Kalik Taylor, a Nunavut owner and founder of Tundra North Tours in Nunavut. He told us that he has the best job in the world, no doubt. And he dreamt about creating a company where everyone can really become immersed in the Inuit culture. And Tundra North Tours provides that through guided tours for visitors and jobs and training for his community. So it was wonderful to get that perspective from Kalik. I've talked a lot about what we're doing domestically, but of course our primary role is to get international visitors to come to Canada, and we have not been sitting on our hands there. We've remained very active in our key international markets. We still strongly believe the US will be our first international market to return, and that's really very good for us because we will see an immediate resurgence in drive markets and a follow-up with air markets. And of course, the level of travel confidence in the US is very, very strong. 77% of Americans say they are ready to travel right now, and they will travel right now. And despite what we may have seen on the news about the vaccine hesitancy in the US, if you dig a little deeper, we've found that among higher educated groups in the US, and which generally correlates quite well with higher income and propensity for international travel, the rate of vaccine hesitancy is very low. It's only 8%. So we can have a high level of confidence, I think, in the fact that those that would typically come and travel to Canada are among those that are embracing vaccinations. And so that will keep our market strong and hopefully limit the hesitancy we have in this country about letting folks from other parts of the world into our borders. So we continue to work very closely with our in-market teams globally to ensure that Canada is staying top of mind. And we're cultivating all of those strong global travel trade and travel media relationships that have really done that for Canada in the past. And one example, fairly recent one of our work is with a Virtuoso, who published this high impact magazine, which was focused entirely on travel ideas in Canada. So close to wrapping up, just looking a little farther down the road, you know, we have to ask ourselves, okay, what is it going to take for our visitor economy to truly thrive in the longer term? And, you know, this pandemic has given us a moment of pause to think about how we can come out of this better, stronger, more competitive. And I think it begins with a new North Star for us as an industry, one that is really orienting us to why, for us as a corporation, we were created in the first place. And our aspiration is for our industry to truly be significant contributors in enhancing the quality of life of Canadians while enriching the lives of visitors. And that means creating net benefits, economically, of course, but also realizing the ones that come from sociocultural exposure and environmental mindfulness. So together with all of you, we can elevate Canada's competitiveness as a tourism destination. We can enable Canadian culture to thrive and place-based regenerative economies to emerge in our future. So to come on this journey with us, let's please stay connected. You can see some of the ways to stay in touch. They're here on the screen. Je vous encourage à rester connecté avec nous sur nos canaux de communication. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. And I'll hand it back to Donnelly.
Thank you very much, Marcia. Thank you very much, both Beth and Marcia for sharing your insights and your information with us. I appreciate it. As I mentioned at the start of this session, sorry, I seem to have lost my screen. Here we go. As I mentioned at the start of the session, the town hall was developed for you to ask questions directly to our industry leaders on issues affecting your businesses and the tourism industry. Many of you submitted your questions in advance, and please continue to submit questions through the Q&A, and I do see a question in there, so we will get to that one. I'll ask that the panel please keep your responses short and to the point so that we can get through as many questions as possible, and I'll do my best to direct them to the most appropriate person. To get started, we'll begin with some of the questions that were submitted in advance. So I'm going to start with Beth. Beth, when do you think the Canada-US border will reopen, and when will international travelers be welcomed?
Well, isn't that the million-dollar question? We have been trying to get an answer on that for many weeks now, and if not many months. It's starting to look like we're going to see the border open perhaps towards the end of the summer. As the case counts come down and as the vaccine rates go up, the government is starting to sound a little bit more positive around the notion of opening travelers. We saw last week the announcement that fully vaccinated Canadians can now travel across the border without quarantining. And that is a step in the right direction. However, I will say that we have been very insistent that vaccines don't understand nationality. And if you have if you've been fully vaccinated and you're either Canadian or American, you should be able to cross the border at this point. And that's what the expert advisory panel has also said, is that we should be able to see the movement back and forth across the border by fully vaccinated travelers. And that we would, they have other recommendations as well that include, testing and contact tracing for partially vaccinated or non-vaccinated travelers. So this is what the science experts, the medical experts are saying, and we are encouraging the federal government to heed their own experts' advice.
Thank you, Beth. For you as well, what is TIAC's position on proof of vaccination for international travelers and travel within Canada by Canadians?
So we have been very clear in suggesting that domestic travel should not require a proof of vaccination. So we don't want to put that onus. We don't want to create regional differences for travel that would cause confusion for domestic and international travelers once they get here. And we also don't want to put the onus on business operators for having to check for proof of vaccination either. So what we have been recommending in support of the expert advisory panel's recommendations as well is that proof of vaccination or checking for immunity or checking for negative test results happen at the point of entry into the country. We know that it's going to be a phased approach. We're suggesting that we start with the Americans because it's the biggest border we have, but we're also watching what's happening in other countries and learning from things that they're doing to see what's working, what's not working, and making sure that we share those observations with government officials when we meet with them.
Because we're talking about proof of vaccination, I'm going to go to the question that came in on the Q&A. And it's for you, Beth, and it says, are talks about proof of vaccination, vaccine passports, taking into consideration those who have recovered from COVID and have antibodies? Studies today show that natural immunities for those who have had COVID and recovered are better than any vaccine. You touched on that a little bit, but maybe if you want to elaborate a bit.
Yeah, so I'll just tell you that proof of it's not immunity, but immunization is part and parcel of our conversation around proof of vaccination. I think it was Harold that asked the question. He's absolutely right. That is a recommendation that's part and parcel of the expert panel as well, that those who have had COVID should be able to identify as such so that they can travel as well, because they do have the antibodies. So it is most definitely part of our conversations and part of our recommendations going forward.
Excellent, thank you, Beth. So for Marcia, when will tourism in Canada reach pre-COVID levels? And what are we doing to help engage international travelers and inspire them to travel to Canada?
Well, I'll perhaps direct your participants today to a study that we have on our website now that looks at various scenarios for recovery. There's sort of the ideal scenario that says if certain conditions are in place and borders open faster than we currently think is likely. But under ideal conditions, full recovery to 2019 levels could happen as soon as 2023. Under poor conditions, it could take as long as 2026. But on balance, given sort of what we know today, we're thinking somewhere, toward the end of 2024, early 2025 is when we'll see kind of our 2019 levels return. In terms of what we're doing internationally, we've been working very closely with our provincial and territorial partners to design innovative new marketing strategies that will help us compete better in all of our core markets. And we have 8 that we focus on. We're pouring much more attention into our American markets, both sorting out who's going to do what on the drive market with our provincial partners, as well as figuring out who's doing what in international markets. And those new strategies, I think, will serve us really well. There's considerably more funding going into those areas, and with the new $100 million investment that Government of Canada put forward and proposed in their budget, we still have some work to do to prove the ROI on that to Treasury Board, but we're almost through that process, and so that allows us to really increase our competitiveness in all of those international markets, including helping to restore air service around the world.
Thank you. Also for you as well, Marcia, how will DC promote the actual tourism businesses to get the travelers closer to the cash register and make a transaction?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're normally very much in the inspiration part of the funnel, getting people to think about Canada, dream about holidays in Canada, and start the search process. But in now going through the search process, they will likely at some point land on our website, and we do have a new portal that has on-the-ground packages of travel experiences around the country, and operators everywhere are welcome to have a look at that and participate in that portal.
Thank you. I've got a question here for myself. It's what are the priorities for the Northwest Territories tourism industry in terms of recovery? First and foremost would be getting our NWT border open to leisure travel, getting the Canada-US border open to leisure travel. Some notice for both of those border openings would be very helpful so that we can get so that businesses have an opportunity to get ramped back up again, rehire and retrain staff, amongst all the other millions of things that they will need to do to be ready and open for business again. Of course, a huge priority is to be marketing to Canadians to come and visit us. Financial support from the governments, from both levels of governments, to assist in reopening costs, and likely an audit of our businesses, which ones are still open and ready to receive visitors, and also an audit of basically what the level of readiness is in our communities in the north to receive visitors. So some work around resident sentiment for sure and so those are definitely our priorities. I'm just going to go to a few more questions that were submitted when people were registering, and we just had a few that came in today. What measures are being worked on to help Indigenous tourism businesses recover from the effects of COVID-19? So that one, I'm going to maybe start with Marcia.
Sure. Well, we work very closely and have for many years with the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada that does a lot of the marketing and product development work for Indigenous tourism businesses. This year, we have significantly increased the level of partnership and investment that we have together. I think it's 6 times the level of what it was in 2019. So you will be seeing a lot more visibility, both domestically and internationally, for ITAC's work and the content that they produce around tourism businesses. We also have a multi-year partnership agreement in place now that strengthens what in the past was an MOU, an alliance, if you will, to work together on promoting tourism, Indigenous tourism businesses. But I would argue the partnership agreement that we have in place now is a bigger, stronger commitment to working together, including having staff that liaises between our organizations. And we're having conversations about more than marketing, that as we look at destination development activity and bringing business intelligence and new data sources to Indigenous tourism businesses, that those are areas of cooperation and partnership for the future.
So I'll just share that. So in the federal budget back in April, there was definitely some monies announced for Indigenous businesses, and ITAC in particular is receiving some monies so that they can do the work that in partnership with Destination Canada, as Marcia just alluded to. The Indigenous tourism businesses are eligible to apply and to access all of the programming that has been made available to all tourism businesses. So the wage subsidy, the rent subsidy, if it's applicable to you, the new hiring credit, as well as the Regional Recovery and Relief Fund and the new, not yet announced how it's exactly going to roll out, Tourism Relief Fund. And that will be coming out. It will be specific for tourism businesses, and it will be it's a program that will be run through CanNor for you in the Northwest Territories. So, the focus for all of us is to get all businesses to the point where we're back up and running and generating not only great experiences, but also employment and revenue opportunities for everyone. So, yeah, so I'll leave it there. If you need more information, just let us know and we can certainly point you in the right direction.
Sounds good. Thanks, Beth. The next question is possibility of leisure travel and forecast of 2021 winter for both domestic and international traffic. I'm going to just start off with that one so that I can speak to the NWT border restrictions and rules and what they've just announced. And then maybe I'll get Marcia and Beth to kind of help finish off that one, if you don't mind. So the Office of the CPHO has said that the leisure travel restrictions will be eased when the Northwest Territories is 75% fully vaccinated. I believe we're at 65% today. And that when the 7-day average of daily new cases is less than 1,000, we've reached that milestone right now. And that the rest of Canada is 66 to 75% fully vaccinated. I think that's a concerning number, but I think that just recently we've heard that there's going to be some more doses on their way to Canada, and that maybe the projection of when that vaccination level may be reached has been changing a bit. So maybe Marcia and Beth, if you maybe want to speak to that part of it, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm no scientist certainly, but our research team does spend a lot of time looking at uptake rates, at vaccine supply, and other factors that you know, the strength and progression of variants and all those things. And for us, I think our best estimate of when we think borders will open aligns with what Beth said earlier, which is toward the end of summer. We think we will reach the 75% threshold of double doses by likely late July, but then we're going to have to let those doses sink in, if you will, for a couple of weeks before borders start to open. So, you know, our forecast for late summer and early fall is that we'll have robust return of travel, that there's a lot of pent-up demand. We hope to be successful in keeping much of that domestic demand at home. And looking at winter, we're already seeing some very strong signals. We get regular updates from some of from my former role, and seeing updates from some of the ski resorts around British Columbia. And I can tell you the booking engines are starting to get very busy. For ski and for winter experiences like Northwest Territories can offer. I would suggest they'll be the same if our international borders are fully open to the world.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're not in the marketing vein, but I will say, you know, we know that we've got you know, another 1 million doses coming in from the United States, and certainly many of the provinces have really pushed the accelerator down on rolling out those vaccines, especially second doses. And I know, you know, here in Ontario, as an example, they've adjusted some of the timelines, and we're starting to see more and more people get that valuable second dose. So that's part and parcel of the message that we're going to keep promoting is, you know, roll up your sleeves. The faster that we get to that 75% mark of double dose, then you know, the easier it's going to be to convince government to open up the borders. And in the meantime, we're starting to see the provincial borders within Canada open up, and that's really encouraging for domestic travel this summer.
Thank you. Another question that was submitted earlier was, do you expect the cruise ship industry to expand its operations in the Canadian Arctic in the coming years? And if so, what are current gaps, infrastructure or other, in the NWT that need to be addressed in this context?
So why don't I just start with, you know, we have just at TIAC launched a national cruise committee because the you know, the ships are all, you know, mostly foreign owned, and it's the supply chain, it's the tour operators, it's the shore excursions, etc. The suppliers to those boats that have been affected by the Transport Canada ban on cruising until next spring. We have been working very closely behind the scenes with the industry, with government, and we are hoping that, you know, we're feeling pretty positive that when there's a border announcement that the US-Canada border opens, we will also have an affirmation that the cruising ban will be lifted for the 2022 season, so that business can start to book again. And those boats can be reallocated back to Canadian waters. So there's that. At the same time, we're doing work with our counterparts in the US on legislation that has been proposed in the States to make it to eliminate the need for ships to stop in Canadian waters, which would devastate our Canadian cruise industry. So there's that. As far as expanding to the to the Arctic. I'm going to have to leave that to one of my colleagues here on the call, because that's they probably know more about that than I would.
Thanks,
I think I can come at that with some very high-level generic statements. Donnelly perhaps has more localized insight. I think certainly, you know, we've seen the popularity from a consumer perspective of Antarctic travel and touring and cruising. And as more of our waters open up for longer seasons, I think we will see the private sector jump into those spaces. There's a fascination with the high north and spectacular beauty and culture to be shared. And so I expect that that is not lost on the cruise industry. And although I haven't seen anything official on that in that regard, I think as the waters become more navigable, we're going to see ships venture farther and farther into that space.
Thanks, Marcia. Unfortunately, I don't know a lot about the cruise ships or ship coming through the Northwest Territories. From what I understand, there is still a lot of work to be done there, a lot of infrastructure that would be needed for it to be a really viable industry in the North. And the communities that they would stop into, a lot of infrastructure and a lot of work to be done for those communities to receive the visitors that they could potentially visit. So from what I'm understanding in my 5 months so far in the industry in the North here, that there's some potential, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done around it. So definitely something that we could do some more work on for sure.
Yeah, if I could just jump in again, Donnelly. Yeah. You know, this is when we talk about destination development for us as a country, this is exactly the kind of thing we're talking about, is that, you know, you don't create a Whistler overnight. You have to have a 50-year plan. But there was a time where Whistler was a garbage dump and a fishing resort. And now look at it. It's a world-class ski resort 50 years later. So, you know, to have that long-term view, to be able to see the horizon of what is possible for a destination is what destination development is all about. And then articulating what kind of policies do we need to make that happen? What sort of infrastructure do we need various parts of government to invest in? What sort of you know, product on the ground would need to be in place to support the interest of the private sector in bringing their money to that? And you know, there's so many opportunities in our country for thinking bigger and more ambitiously about what we have to offer the world from a tourism experience, that, you know, once we put our minds to something like that, even if it's on a 40-year horizon, the benefits will show up in the first 10. So we just have to know what's possible and start the process. And so planning initiatives around destination development it's a new area for Destination Canada. Frankly, I think one of the reasons that I was hired as the CEO as its new CEO, to try to propel forward and limitless potential, I think, in this country for it.
Thank you. Thanks, Marcia. We're at 3 o'clock already, unfortunately, and I didn't get an opportunity to get to all the questions. I didn't even get an opportunity to get to the final question about how we can work together post-COVID. But I mean, I think that's very simple. We just continue working together and communicating and making sure that we're working for our operators and our members. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. But I'd definitely like to thank you for joining this town hall and for submitting your questions. For those that did not have your questions answered live, we will send them to the panel and ask that they reply to you directly by email. But once again, thank you very much to the Tourism Industry Association of Canada and to Destination Canada for partnering with Northwest Territories Tourism today and for being with us. And a big thank you to our participants. We really appreciate your time and for you joining us today.
Thanks for including us.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.